Welcome to Shahnameh, Book of Kings. Today we continue with the tale of the Reign of Kesra Nushin-Ravan. At this time, the Emperor of Byzantium sent an envoy to the king with a letter and gift and a locked strongbox. The envoy said, "The message from my master is as follows. The king has many wise priests at his court. If without opening it, they can say what is inside this locked box, we shall send tribute and presents beside, according to our custom. But if your clever priest cannot penetrate this mystery, the king should not demand any more tribute from us, and neither should he send armies into our realm. Answer as seems fitting to you." The world's king said to the envoy, "Even this is not hidden from God. With his grace, I shall solve the problem. And I have clear-thinking advisers to help me. Spend a week as our guest, and give yourself freely to wine and pleasure." The king was bewildered at what to do. He summoned his courtiers and wise men, and each of them looked at the keyless casket from every angle. But all of them had to confess their ignorance of what was inside. The king became worried when none of the group had any success. He thought, "This secret of the heavens is a problem that Bozorjmehr could handle." But embarrassed by the suffering his wise counselor had been through, he frowned and his face turned pale. His painless thoughts prompted him to have a suit of clothes brought from the treasury and a fine horse with a royal saddle. He sent those to Bozorjmehr with a message, "I cannot deny the suffering you have endured. It was the high heavens that had me hurt you in this way. Your talk infuriated me, and you put your own body at risk. Now, something has happened that is troubling my heart. The Emperor of Byzantium has sent me one of their priests, a famous man in his own land, who has a golden casket with him that's completely closed with a lock and a seal of musk. The Emperor says that our counselors should explain what is hidden inside the casket. I thought this secret is something the soul of Bozorjmehr could understand." When Bozorjmehr heard these words, his heart was filled with his old sufferings. He left the place where he had been confined, washed his head and body, and prayed before God who rules the world. He was an innocent man, and his king was quick to anger. And Bozorjmehr was afraid that he would be harmed by the king again. It was still dark night when the king's message reached him, and day had not yet dawned. As the sun showed his crown and night veiled her face, Bozorjmehr peered up toward the stars, and when the shining sun rose in the sky, he washed the eyes of his heart with the water of wisdom. He sought out a wise man on whom he could rely and said to him, "My affairs are in a wretched state because the sufferings I have been through have darkened my eyes. Watch for who meets us on the road and ask them about their lives, but don't inquire through their names." Bozorjmehr set out from his house, and there was a beautiful woman hurrying towards him. His companion described everything he could see, and Bozorjmehr said, "Find out if this lovely woman has a husband." When she was asked, the woman answered, "I have a husband and a child too at home," and Bozorjmehr smiled at her words as he rode forward on his high-stepping horse. Then another woman appeared, and Bozorjmehr guided and asked her, "Do you have a husband and child, or do your arms embrace nothing but the wind?" She asked, "I have a husband, but no child. And now that you have heard my answer, get out of my way." And at that moment, a third woman appeared, and she too was questioned. "You have a lovely face and a proud, provocative walk. Who keeps you company?" "I've never," she replied, "had a husband, and I don't want to show my face to anyone." Now, when Bozorjmehr heard these answers, he turned them over in his mind. His face was melancholy as he hurried forward. When he arrived, he was taken to the king, who commanded him to approach the throne. And then the king's heart was filled with sorrow, and he sighed deeply because he realized that his wise adviser could no longer see. The king apologized at length for his anger against this innocent man, and then talked about Byzantium and its emperor and the locked casket. Bozorjmehr said to the world's king, May you shine for as long as the heavenly bodies shine. We should call an assembly of wise men and priests, as well as the envoy from Byzantium, and have the casket placed before the king and his courtiers. Then, by the power of God, who gave us thought, and has made my soul delight in truth, I shall say what is inside the casket without touching either the box itself or its lock. Even if my eyes are now dark, my heart is bright, and my soul is armored with knowledge. The king was happy to hear this, and his heart revived like a flower in the springtime. He drew himself up, and his worries fell away, and he had his envoy and his casket summoned together with his priests and advisers and sages, whom he seated before Bozorjmehr. He addressed the envoy. He says, "Give us your message and make your demands." The envoy repeated what his emperor had said. A victorious king should have wisdom, knowledge, and a good reputation. You have the far and the strength of the world conqueror, greatness, knowledge, and might, priests who seek out the truth, and heroes who support you here at your court. You take your part in the world at large. Let your clever courtiers see this locked and sealed casket, and let them in their wisdom say clearly what is hidden there. Then we shall send you tribute and taxes, and since my country is wealthy enough to do this, but if they cannot do this, then they should no longer ask us for tribute. Bozorjmehr then invoked God's blessings and said, "May the world's king always be happy, understanding, fortunate, and generous. I thank the Lord of the sun and moon, who shows our souls the way to the wisdom, who alone knows what is open and what is secret. He has no need of knowledge, but knowledge is my desire. There are 3 shining pearls inside the casket, within a number of coverings. One is pierced, one is half pierced, and iron has never touched the third." When the envoy heard this, he brought the key, while Nushin-Ravan watched. There was a box inside the casket, and inside this were layers of silk in which 3 pearls were hidden, just as the Persian sage had said. The first of them was pierced, the second half-pierced, and the last untouched. All the priests who were present cried their congratulations and showered Bozorjmehr with jewels. The king's face cleared, and as a reward he filled Bozorjmehr's mouth with splendid pearls. His heart was tormented by the thought of what he had done before. He writhed within and frowned to think how he had treated this man who had shown him such love and loyalty. When Bozorjmehr saw that the king's soul was suffering, he spoke of those things from the past that he had hidden, the armband and the blackbird, his anxiety for the jewels and the king's sleep. Then he said to the king, "This was fated to happen, and there is no point in suffering regret because of it. The heavens brings us good and evil, whether to the king or to the priests or to Bozorjmehr. The signs of the seeds that God has sowed in the stars are written on our foreheads. May Nushin-Ravan's soul rejoice and always be free from pain and sorrow. However glorious a king might be, it is his vizier's job to be an ornament to his court. The king's business is hunting and warfare, wine and rejoicing, generosity, justice and feasting. He knows how his predecessors reigned and follows their example. It is the vizier who must accumulate wealth, maintain the army, combat gossip, and hear supplicants for justice. It is his heart and soul that are troubled by worries about the administration and treasury." As Kesra Nushin-Ravan's life drew to a close, he nominated his son Hormozd as his successor, and wrote a document to him setting out advice and final wishes. He began by invoking God and continued, "This is the advice of the son of Kobad. Understand, my son, that this world is faithless and filled with sorrow, hardship, pain, and adversity. And whenever you are happy here, and your heart is free of sorrow, and you rejoice in your life, remember that you must leave this fleeting world. When thoughts of my departure came to me in the bright days and the long nights, I searched to see who would be worthy of the crown. I have 6 wise sons. All of them are generous and just, and they delight my heart. I chose you because you are the oldest, and you have wisdom and will be an adornment to the crown. Kobad was 80 when he made me his successor. I am now 74, and I name you as the world's king. In doing this, I seek only rest and the public good, and the hope that my soul will be blessed. I hope, too, that God grants you nothing but happiness and prosperity. If you make men secure by your justice, you will also ensure your own security, and heaven will be your reward. Great is the man who sows the seeds of righteousness. See that you are always patient, since it is not becoming for a king to rush into decisions. A king who is alert and seeks for instructions keeps his good reputation forever. Have no dealings with lies, because if you do, your luck will wither away. And keep your heart and mind far from haste, because haste sends wisdom to sleep. Do good, and strive for the good in all things. Good and evil attend to the words of the wise. Do not let evil come near you, for it will certain have its effect on you. Dress appropriately, eat appropriately, and pay attention to your father's advice. You come from God. See that you turn to him if you would have him as your guide. If your justice makes the world prosper, your throne will be secure, and your subjects will be happy. If men do well, reward them so that they forget the pains they took. Keep the wise happy and close by, and make the world dark for those who are malevolent. Consult with the wise on every subject, and do not complain about the difficulties that kingship imposes on you. If the wise can always reach you, you will always be able to keep your crown and throne. Do not let your subjects live in wretchedness, and see that the country's nobles benefit from your justice. Do not look kindly on those of low character, and entrust no task to an unjust man. Incline your ears and heart to the poor, and take their sorrows on yourself. In this way, you will sow seeds of righteousness in your orchard, and your enemies will become your friends. When a powerful man acts justly and from the heart, the world is happy in his reign, and he too is made happy. Do not withhold your wealth from the deserving, and be generous to the virtuous. If you follow my advice, your crown will keep its eminence. May he who bestows all benefits look kindly on you, and may your good deeds be a refuge for you. Do not forget my words. Even though you can no longer see me, may your mind remain fresh and strong, your heart happy, your body pure, and safe from all malevolence. May wisdom always guard you, and may your mind be filled with good thoughts. When I have left this great world, build me a tomb like a palace, in a place where few men go, and so high that the vultures cannot fly over it. Its entrance must be high in the vault, as high as 10 lariats would reach, and over it must be written that this is my court, together with an account of my greatness, my wealth, my armies. See that the chamber is spread with carpets and cushions. Preserve my body with camphor, and sprinkle musk on my head for a crown. Bring 5 unused brocades of cloth of gold from my treasury, and wrap me in them according to the custom of the Chionids and our ancestors. Construct an ivory couch and place it there, and over it suspend my crown. Then to its right and left set out all my gold dishes, goblets, and jewels. 20 goblets are to be filled with rose water, wine, and saffron, and 200 with musk, camphor, and ambergris. Do not exceed or fall short of what I order you. The blood must be drawn off from the trunk of my body so that it dries, and then it must be filled with camphor and musk. Then close the door to the chamber, since no one must see the king. If the tomb is built in this manner, no one will be able to find his way to me. Let my children and family, and all those who will grieve for my death, abstain from feasts and festivals for 2 months, since this is the custom when a king dies. And it would be right if all who are noble and benevolent would weep for the death of their king. See that you do not disobey the commands of Hormozd, or so much as draw breath without his knowledge." Everyone wept when they heard of this document. Kesra Nushin-Ravan lived for 1 more year after he had written it, and when he died, these words of his were his memorial. See that you preserve his memory. Now, I should tell of the crown of Hormozd and place him on the throne. As Hormozd established his power and was finally able to reign as he wished, his evil nature became apparent, and he strayed from the paths of righteousness. One by one, he destroyed his father's confidants and advisors, and the men who had lived peacefully and with no fear of danger. There were 3 in particular who had been scholars of Nushin-Ravan's court, 1 old man and 2 younger men. The first was Izod-Goshhap, the second was wise Bozorjmehr, a man blessed with the divine far, and the third Mahazar, also wise and of serene and cheerful character. These 3 had served Nushin-Ravan's throne as courtiers and viziers, but Hormozd feared that one day they would feel no gratitude toward him, and he was determined to bring each of them down into the dust. He had Izod-Goshhap thrown into prison for no reason. The chief priest at that time, a man called Zardhesht, was filled with anxiety for Izod-Goshhap's fate. It was as if an arrow had wounded his heart, and this good and noble priest became pale with worry. After a day in which Izod-Goshhap had neither a servant, food, clothing, or any companion, he sent a message to the chief priest. "You have always been as dear to me as my marrow and skin. I am now friendless in the king's prison, and no one visits me. I'm hungry, and my aching stomach longs for nourishment. Send me some food, some antidote to the pains that gnaw at me." The priest's heart was moved to sympathy for his friend's situation, but he sent a cautious reply. "Despite your chains, be thankful you have not been physically harmed yet." He grieved inwardly and pondered what to do. He sent some food to the prison, but his heart trembled with apprehension at what he was doing, and he said to himself, "If that unchivalrous and luckless ruler finds out that this priest has sent something to the prison, my life won't be worth a copper coin. The king will find some way to harm me, and his face will turn pale with anger against me." But his heart was wrung for Izod-Goshhap's suffering, and his face was sallow with grief. He ordered his cook to take food to the prison, and then he mounted his Arab horse and rode there himself. The 2 men embraced, and their eyelashes were as wet as the clouds in spring. They talked at length about the king's evil disposition. A table was set before Izod-Goshhap, who took the sacred barsom in his hand and murmured his prayers, where Zardhesht listened. He talked of his wealth and his palace, and then he said, "Now, go directly to Hormozd and say, on my behalf, Now, go directly to Hormozd and say, on my behalf, don't turn your head away, but think of all that I have undergone, protecting you as if you were my son. Is my reward to be imprisoned here, to live in chains, consumed with grief and fear? My heart is innocent and will display the wrongs it has endured on Judgment Day." As the priest was returning home, one of the king's spies ran and told Hormozd all he had heard, and the king decided on an evil course. He hardened his heart against Izod-Goshhap and sent someone to the prison and had him killed. He continued to act toward Zardhesht as if nothing had happened, but he had the priest's words repeated to him at length and began to consider how to kill him. He ordered his cook to prepare a dish that had been secretly poisoned. When the priest came to the court for the royal audience, the king said to him, "Don't leave us today. I have found a new cook." The priest sat, and a table was set before him, and his face turned pale. He knew that the table signified his end, and he was not mistaken in this. The cooks brought in the dishes, and the king ate some of everything. Then the poison dish was brought in, and the priest looked at it and knew in his heart that was being offered to him as nourishment was poison. Hormozd watched and said nothing. He stretched out his hand to the poisoned dish in the way kings do when they want to bestow a favor on one of their subjects. He took some brains from the dish and said to the priest, "What a fine brain you have! I reserved this tender morsel just for you. Open your mouth and eat it. It will nourish you well." The priest replied, "By your soul and mind, and may you reign forever, do not order me to eat this morsel. I am full. Don't urge me to eat more." Hormozd said, "By the sun and moon, by your king's pure soul, take this food from my fingers. Do not break my heart by denying me." The priest replied, "The king orders me, and I have no choice." He ate the morsel, and, tormented by pain, rode quickly to his own house. He told no one of the poison he had eaten, but lay down on a mattress, groaning in agony. He ordered that antidotes for poison be brought from his own treasury or from the town, but when he ate them, they had no effect, and he complained bitterly to God about Hormozd. The king sent one of his confidants to watch the priest and see whether the poison had taken effect and whether his plan had failed. The priest saw the envoy, and tears coursed down his cheeks. He said, "Tell Hormozd that I say this to him: your fortunes will decline, and you and I shall both go before our heavenly judge. From now on, you will not be safe from harm, because God's justice will find you. You are a malevolent man, and I bid you farewell. Evil will come to you from evil you have done." The envoy wept to hear these words and reported them to King Hormozd, regretted what he done, and he brooded on the truth of the priest's words. He sighed deeply, but could see no way to avoid the pains the priest had spoken of. Then the priest died, and the wise men of the country wept bitterly for him. This is the way of the world, which is full of pain and sorrow. Why strive for a crown and glory and wealth? For the moments of pleasure pass, and time counts our every breath. And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back tomorrow with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends,